My guest today is Robert Ian Bonnick, speaker, best-selling author, model, entrepreneur. Today, Rob shares how he went from being raised in children's home.
My mother used to visit us on a fairly semi-regular basis. For me, I was ashamed of her.
Experiencing racism.
We were walking past a pub. Someone ran out, "Oi, N-word, go back to your own F-word country." And this guy hit me.
To breakout success in modeling, sports, speaking on world biggest stages, creating one of the most popular podcasts in Bali, and much, much more.
Tell me about working with Madonna. How did that happen?
Hey guys, Anatoly here. Before we continue, a quick ask. I know you're enjoying the show. I would like to bring bigger guests, and the best way you can help me is please subscribe, because it helps me to get more reach and give us all more opportunity to learn from the best in the world. I really appreciate you. Now let's go back to the show. You yourself had a very tough upbringing. So were you born in a children's home, or how did you come to a children's home? And how was your life there for 17 years?
Yeah, so my parents came from Jamaica separately, from two different parts of Jamaica, St. Elizabeth and St. Catherine, Kingston. And they met, had like a fatal attraction of sorts, literally. Apparently my dad said, last time he saw my mum, there was a knife involved and there was a threat involved, right? And he didn't really necessarily want to see her again. And so we were living with our mum at that time, but then she was also suffering from things like schizophrenia and the whole Jamaican challenge, which is, you were led to believe that the streets are paved with gold. You come from Jamaica, you work in the UK, London, and you go home and live like a king or queen. You came to work on the streets, and the streets were not paved with gold.
Yeah.
Right? So you're already suffering from that. So then you have this fatal attraction, you have two kids, and he was the same age as I was when I left the UK, 18.
Yeah.
And so all these common denominators came into it, but ultimately they were living separately. The relationship was already kind of done. And then one day my mum left my sister, who's about a year and a half older than me. I was in a cot, and she went to the place where our dad was staying, like a halfway house, and basically dropped my sister there with some change of nappies, some clothes, so a bit of food, knocked on the door, and a relative or a distant cousin answered and said, "Look, these are Lambert's kids. I'm done." And then she left. And then when her dad got home from work, remember he's 18, he's trying to find his way. There's no real financial independence or security. And he's realizing, now I've got two kids to look after. I can't do it. He went to the police. They said, "Look, she hasn't committed any crime, right? But you can have them brought up in care for, I think, a percentage of your income." And he took that option. And then, so then we were in one children's home that apparently wasn't that great for a short period of time. And then we were moved to another one. And that's where I stayed for maybe 16 years, and with my elder sister. And so what was it like? It was, when you only know what you know, there's nothing to really compare it to. So what it was like for me was, it was a learning ground, right? It was a learning ground because I was always the youngest. I was there for the longest, pretty much. And I was bullied. I had all sorts of issues. I was extremely shy, had the worst stutter, lisp, mechanical jaw issues. I wasn't the guy that you see before you today then. And if you'd have asked anybody then, they'd be like, "That guy become that? No way."
Yeah.
But the interesting part is that each aspect served me in a different way. So I'll give you three. So one aspect was that I was born alone and I would die alone. That was the mindset which I had. So pros and cons. Pro was that there was somewhere within me where no one could get it to, no matter of the bullying which I faced, the racism that I faced, all the challenges that I faced. There was a part in me which I kept extremely well protected from anyone and anything, right? That was great. In relationship later on, it didn't work out because that's the time where you need to share yourself with your partner, and I wasn't able to do that. So on one way, it saved me from all of the taking on this really hardcore stuff in a very negative way that would probably impede me for the rest of my life. But on the other hand, it wouldn't allow me to be open at the time where I really needed to be, right? So that was one thing. A second thing, that was going on was this learning experience of, with all of these kids used to fight each other based upon their color, nationality, ethnicity, ideology, because we're all different. Jamaicans, Pakistani, Indian, German, Spanish, you name it, all the colors of the rainbow. And we didn't get along, most of us. So there was this hate, but really wasn't hatred, but at the time you would use that word. But there was a few times. One was when the mods, this group of neo-fascists, basically came to attack our house.
Wow.
Right? It's a long story, but the short version is they were chasing someone who ran into our house. So I was watching TV with some other kids. I was maybe 6, 8, 9, that sort of age. Through the window comes a massive, kind of like a metal pallet. And then it was seriously on. 30, 40 people with bats, bricks, weapons of all kinds, besieging the house or sieging the house, looking to inflict pain on everyone they could find, no matter if you're a kid, no matter if you're an adult. So there's like, at that point, everyone in that children's home forgot their differences and everyone fought together. From the kids, we ran upstairs and we were throwing cups and glasses like this down onto the melee below.
Wow.
Right? From the kids in our children's home who were second dan, karate, kung fu, boxing, and literally about 10 kids or people repelled a force of 30 or 40. And that taught me, I was like, you know what? So we do apparently don't like each other, but when there's something that threatens all of us, we galvanize, and we forget our differences and we become one. And at that point, I realized that was my mission, was to do that, was to find ways to bring people together with vastly different ideologies, ethnicities, ways of seeing the world. I knew then when I saw that's what I needed to do. So that was the second one. And then lastly, it was about like learning that the things which I saw as negatives are positives. So I was an introvert, heavily introverted, heavily shy. But what I realized was that introvert gave me the opportunity to see people and see their actions and the reactions of what happened later. One guy was shot in the head, right? That was shocking, right? Bang.
How did that happen?
That was in a pub playing pool. They got in an argument. A guy pulls out a gun and shoots him in the head. Like bad, horrible situation. Other situations that weren't so melodramatic happened. But what I saw was, because I was able to not talk, not engage, but I was able to kind of realize, okay, so if you do that, that could happen. If you were seeing 5 girls at once because you were an incredibly good-looking guy and had that thing, it looks cool from the outside, but then when I look and speak to each of the girls individually who don't see me as a threat because I'm so damn shy, then I realized that each of them was suffering their own hell. So from what looked on the outside as being a super cool thing to do, I realized it was not a cool thing to do at all, because you're hurting people in the process, not realizing it. And then the extrovert came when I was really good at sport and excelled and was put on a stage to receive medals and awards and all this stuff. And it's very difficult to be in that place where everybody's, yeah, and you're like, yeah. So I developed this alter ego, right? Like,
For sure.
the introvert made the extrovert. This guy who was happy-go-lucky, the guy you see before you now, that guy came from that, like an experiment, of like, I wonder what would happen if I would be like this. And then what I noticed is I was able to see that, hey, one gives you the clarity of looking and seeing, how things are, how people are, what happens when you make these sorts of decisions and choices. And the other one was more of a promoter, more of a, this is what happens when you're able to move the energy of people around you and draw that energy in and push that energy out. These are the sorts of experiences working with Madonna, becoming this incredible model, from working with supermodels. And all of these things were created by the extrovert, not the introvert. So then I realized, wow, these two things together empower me to do what I just said, empower me to bring together anyone, to be able to speak to anyone, to be able to get to the core of anyone, because those two things work in tandem. Sometimes you need to lift the energy to bring people out of their energy level or their place of maybe slumped over. They stand up. they're smiling all of a sudden, and suddenly these things come forward. For others, they need that for you just to listen, not to speak, not to bring the energy, not to move the energy, but just to hold the energy. And that's where the introvert comes in, which is just able to hold that space, hold that energy, and allow the questions, the energy to come through without fighting it, without repelling it, without judging it, just allowing it to be. And that's really what Speak Up Monday is all about, funnily enough. Yeah.
I want to linger a little bit on the childhood, and then we can talk about Madonna for sure,
Oh, yeah.
and all who you are now. So I've never been to child's home, so just dumb question, but I'm really curious.
Yeah.
How does a day look like?
Yeah.
What is it? Is there any structure? Do you feel like you're in prison, or do you feel like you're free? Like, what is it?
Great question. So each children's home, in a way, is run not in a different way, but not necessarily the same. So where we were, you had members of staff that were kind of like surrogate parents, right? Now, each one had their own challenges, gifts, and I guess things that take away, right? So we're there over the period of time, maybe 20 members of staff, 20 surrogate parents, let's say. Now, so for example, one, Eugene, she was Barbadian, so from Barbados. So she brought that flavor in with food. When she was on, so they would stay overnight, and they'd work in shifts. And some would be working the whole day, and some would stay overnight, and then they would kind of be replaced the next day. So with Eugene, you know, like she will be teaching you about the food, saying, you know, you're eating this Barbadian food. Another one, Jamaican food. Another one, more Australian, eating Australian food. Another one, more English, eating English food. So each one had their own mix, their own way that impacted you. The lady who ran the home, Gail, was a Christian, right? An ardent Christian. And so the Christian values kind of came through, I think, until her husband was cheating on her. And I think things changed after that, you know. So again, but you see the fallibility of human beings up close, and that's what I mean. That each one had their pros, and each one had not cons, but things that took away from who they were, and you would intrude all of it. So the one aspect is you have those guys who are there like surrogate parents. The second aspect is based upon the age that you are. School is like everywhere else. School is not inside. It's like a place where you live, the children's home. So then you go out to school every day. In the morning, you wake up early, you know, you go to walk to school if it's close enough, do your school, maybe come back at lunchtime or not, and then come back after school, maybe after school activities. You come back, how was your day? Dinner's on the table, right? And then you have your life, homework, all the rest of that. So that is kind of like a normal kind of home situation that looks a bit like your home. Where it changed or where it was different or maybe not was on the weekends. You know, I was a guy, I used to wake up early then, and I was always, in my mind, it's not always true, but it's true in my head. I was a guy who had to do all the errands, right? I was up early, it's like, oh, Rob, you're up, yeah, go and do this, go and do that, go and do this. Oh. Right? So I would go and do this milk round, where you go and deliver milk early in the morning, followed by a paper round, where you go and deliver the papers, right? Early morning. So I was that kid, right? So during the weekends, I would have that. During the week, would be like a normal life. And then, then at nighttime, you have a certain bedtime that you're supposed to be asleep by. But me, I used to stay up late and you know, and try and do other things with my time that wasn't necessarily the productive one. But in general, that's kind of how it operates. And when you got to the age of 16, then you were given like a budget. So you're given X amount of pocket money a week. And from that, you're supposed to go out, buy your own food, cook your own food, as though you were living by yourself. And in this way, it was a way for you to transition by the age of 18 to leave the children's home, go to a council flat, a council home, and you know, not have this massive shock of having to look after yourself and all the rest of that. So
I have so many questions.
Yeah.
I guess the mindset question is important, because if I was in a children's home, part of me would say, nobody loves me.
Yeah.
Part of me says, nobody needs me. I'm a failure. So it's very hard to then turn it around and says, no, this is not true. Because I see how you talk about your dad right now with compassion and with love, but I could imagine that there probably it was an anger.
Yeah.
And how did that come to you, and how did you overcome that?
Yeah, great question. I mean, look, there's a few ways. One was racism, and we'll get into that later. But even though I was this introverted extrovert, and you know, I worked things out like that fairly early, I was still a very upset kid. I was very angry, and sport really helped to exorcise, and I use that word on deliberately, to exorcise those feelings of rage. So rugby, you know, you put it all into the tackle. You know, I used to go in head first, you know, and would come out like, you know. But this was really important for a kid who's struggling with identity issues and all the rest of that to get through. Two other things. So the other one was that, you know, I was always really upset with how I looked. So for this 13, 14 years, I was the only black kid at school. I think there was one other girl, Rosalind, who came later. And so I identified with a white view of the world, right, in multiple ways. One is around beauty. So then I looked at me and said, okay, the color, I can deal with that. The nose was too wide. The lips were too big. The head was too, like, I would break it down. I would sit there for hours with a mirror in front of my face. I was picking myself apart, right? I'll have a nose job, a lip job, a this job, a that job, like fully, even to the point of, you know, thinking that, yeah, like if you didn't look a certain way, you wouldn't make it in the world. And I believe I didn't look that way. So therefore, part of me believed very strongly that I wouldn't make it in the world, right? Because I was ugly and all of these things. So that's part of what the modeling was for, was to find a way to get that outside acknowledgement that you look okay, right? Which didn't work because we can get to that story later, but it didn't work and I came crashing down to earth. But so there were 3 courses that were very powerful. One was a landmark forum that I did 3 times. So it's like a conversation that goes on over 2.5 days. Really powerful. I met with meditation, spiritual, classical Indian gurus. That's another lineage. So you've got the forum, you've got the meditation and all of that. And then I used to do kind of any other course that I could find that was self-development kind of focused, reading books and all this other stuff. So these 3 things in tandem helped me to realize a few things. One was that, you know, how you see the world is based upon how you see yourself, you know? And as I mentioned, I was looking to the outside world for acknowledgement. And then I had a shocking experience that realized that that wasn't it. That's not where it was. And so then I realized it had to be inside. So I tried the external, didn't work. The internal, I thought, well, that's where I need to go. And then there was a relationship for like 22 years with a girl called Isabella. And we went on that journey. You know, we met in a meditation retreat, and then we just kept on going and went deeper. She went in a different direction. I went in a different direction, but it was deeply involved in that, you know, like the internal aspects of you, that this is a shell. It's not who you are. You know, you have emotions, but you're not your emotions. You have all of these things, but you're none of these things. So then who are you? You know, you're pure spirit. Your pure soul, your timeless. And so I got to these sorts of places, and then that helped me to come to terms with how I looked, right? But it was an inside job, not an outside job. And so these things helped me between the ages of around 20 and up until now, right? But I would say 20 to 35 were the most intense years of this kind of inner search. For understanding, for acceptance of myself. Yeah. And all the modeling and all the other stuff, all through that whole period, I didn't have it at all. Wow. The outside world would have seen this guy who's going for it, extrovert, he's having the best life. But internally, I was screwed, and I knew it.
Wow.
But I was looking for those ways to deflect what was truly happening inside of me to do the outside world stuff.
I think that's very common, especially with people who gain some success. They start to associate with their success, and they start to believe the story. But then, if they don't fix internally who they are, then it catches up on you. And then, like,
It has to.
yeah. So, I mean, your parents is very interesting because, I mean, it can be seen as some kind of betrayal. So, how was your relationship to your parents? Have you talked to them afterwards? Did you make amends with them? And you have a sister as well. Was she part of this story as well?
Yeah. So good. I didn't like the way she looked. I didn't like the way she smelt. There you go, the smell. She had a mustache. So I had all of these things that I didn't look forward to seeing her, right? And it hurts me to say that, but it's the truth, right? I didn't look forward to seeing her. It's one of those ones that I had to endure as opposed to look forward to or enjoy, right? And this is early years. So we're talking 8 to 16, 17, 18, right? My dad, I didn't recall ever seeing. Apparently he came very early, but then he realized that our mother was coming to see us and he didn't want anything to do with threats or knives or anything, so he didn't come. I met my dad again maybe 10, 15 years ago by chance and a bunch of happenstance things. But with him, I was able to forgive him because I'd done all the work. And I'd come to the understanding and the realization that I take responsibility for my life, that ultimately I've had a great life, you know, and had I have maybe not been brought up the way that I did, Lord only knows where I would be. So by the time I met him, I was able to say, listen, whatever you're feeling, if there's this or this, leave it, drop it. You don't need it because I'm complete about that, you know, and there's no ill will, feelings of shame, guilt towards you. None. So be cool. And we've been best mates ever since.
Really?
Now, my mom, I believe I missed the opportunity to actually say that to her in person. I've done it in other ways, you know, where I've had conversations with her because ultimately, you know, because obviously having kids now, you know, like mom is the key, not dad. Dad's if you're out there, but mom is the key, really. Dad is important, both are important, but mom is the key. So by me feeling ashamed of my mom, I realized it's all internal. It's you know, one finger pointing is 3 back at you. So me saying I'm ashamed of my mom, no, you're ashamed of you, not her. So then I was able to come to a place of thank you to my mom, right? And I know she had her issues and she had her challenges and wanted us all to be a family again. I remember these things, but it's like, Mum, we never were a family. But I really hold her in high regard, and I really thank her for doing what she did with all of the challenges that she had, was still able to do what she did, right? So I love and appreciate her more now than I ever did when she was alive and when I was younger, which is a bit shocking to me, but that's the truth, you know? Yeah. So the work that I did, the inner work that I did, was able to flush out and to release any ill will, feelings of anger, doubt, sadness, jealousy, rage. All of those things had been processed before I met my dad again. And then during the time where I met my mom, those feelings of being ashamed of her, ashamed of myself, you know, then that took me longer to process, you know, because that was realizing that all of that is that. It's nothing to do with that. It's everything to do with this. Yeah.
Your sister?
Good. Carol was always there, and we never really hung out till we left. So at the age of 17 and a half, we were given a council flat together, and then we lived together, right? During the children's home, we acknowledged each other, but didn't really kind of hang out until maybe 2 or 3 years before we left. So Carol is a beautiful human, man. She's extremely funny, very, very, very intelligent, and almost too intelligent. Now, the thing with her is that whereas for me, the growing up in care, I saw ultimately as a springboard, right? As a trampoline, she took it in a different way. And I think there's that relationship with daughters that have with their parents that was missing. I think that had a really deeper impact on her, not to the positive, right? She had a scar on her leg that over the years tried to use skin grafts to cover it and never really worked. And that became, for a woman having this, especially for her, she felt that she couldn't become close with people in a romantic setting. So with Carol, it's a different story, and I love it. I love her greatly, dearly, but she had a different journey throughout all of that, and it impacted her differently. And I know she's very proud of me, and I love her for that. And I probably don't speak to her enough. So after this, I'll probably give her a buzz. But yeah, it was two, like, you can grow up in the same way, but have two very different experiences. And that would be an example of that. Yeah.
I read one of your posts on LinkedIn about your book, and you said that a lot of people who were in your children's home, they either died or became a drug addict or in jail right now. And you are a big exception from that.
Yeah.
So why do you think that happened? Why do you think those people are there and you are here? What is something that you did differently, I guess?
I think there's 2 or 3 answers to that. One, despite what I've said, and I still feel that the luck is in there somewhere, and do you create your own luck? Yes. But there's luck in there also. So that's definitely one part of it. Another part of it is, I kind of had this mindset, that there was, I call it the 3 pillars of purpose, right? So one pillar is no purpose. I have no purpose. I just want to have a great time. I want to do things that inspire me, that enlighten me, that give me joy, that give me freedom, all of these things that are important to me, and I'm going to go and do it as much as I can. The second pillar is like being pushed by something. So I grew up in a children's home, so therefore doing things that impact to positive other orphan kids, like coaching basketball, I feel pushed to do it. Another one has been pulled, right? So pulled is like here, ride around on my bike, surrounded by this beautiful nature, and then I get an idea drops in. It's like, whoa, I'm going to do that because I can and I will and I know how to do it. I'm doing it, right? And this is how certain events have been created and things like that. So me, upon leaving the kids' home, I was more in number one. I was just like, right, life, let's go. There was part of me that was very careful. Like I got a basketball scholarship at the age of 15. I could have gone to America to a college and started and gone really seriously for ball. And at the time, I was very defensive in my thinking. So are the people around me. Rob, what if you get an injury? What if you get this? What if you get that? Better that you go to school, get good grades. So that's what I ended up doing. So after that, I think I felt that I'd missed on something. And so part of me was like, let's just go out and experience stuff and have fun. Right. So I think a part of it was on leaving the kids' home was that mindset of, I just want to, not that I was out of jail, but in a way it's like I'm out of prison. I want to go, I want to experience things, which give me joy, And so I went and I studied down at Southampton University, the Warsash campus, this education course, right? I didn't really want to leave. It was an excuse to leave London, right? It was an excuse to get out of that and do it. Playing basketball, traveling around was an excuse to get out of that. So I think these are things that were quite important of this mindset of like life is there to be discovered, to be appreciated, to be enjoyed, to be go out and get it, right? So I think that was very important. So luck, that, and just this mindset of I did feel protected. Something about all of the experiences that I had. I could have died a few times. Just things. I used to run into walls when I was a kid to see how it felt like.
Wow.
I smashed my head open 4 or 5 times. One time I was sitting in a tree, dropping the apple, and being utterly and totally convinced that I could control my descent. So I'll be there on a tree, dropping this apple after hours, and I'm throwing myself off, and boom, I didn't control my descent, right? And I was like a bit giddy, but no one there was watching. I thought, okay, that doesn't work. I used to run into trees and lampposts on purpose to see what it felt like. So boom, so I smashed my head open 3 or 4 times going up, and it became so hard that I used to hit it and no more blood.
Really?
Because this that's why people used to call me peanut head.
Yeah.
But I got this peanut shaped head.
All right.
But that was it, right? So, and when you look at it, it's like, what was I trying to do? And, why was I trying to open my brain? It's almost like I was trying to get out of my head.
Yes.
Why the hell do you want to do that? And again, there's ways you can look at that. So I think, with that paired with this, which I never really put together in this particular way. Thank you for the question. But I think that was it. It was like, this is the way for me to get out of my head, right?
Yeah.
Is to go out and just to do stuff, experience stuff that's out of my comfort zone to a certain extent. So I think all of these things, and because I didn't die, I think I had this feeling of being protected.
Yeah.
Somehow, I still do. This feeling that there's a guiding hand, and this was before I found out this Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, and all this other stuff later. But I've always felt, from as long as I can remember, that I had this guiding hand. And where it started was sitting, and I think we all have access to this, right? Sitting there in the mirror, pulling myself apart, going down the spiral, or I don't look good enough. And that means I'm screwed, right? And I remember there was a voice that I heard for the first time, and it was like, Robert, just look after your skin. And in that moment, I acknowledged that was a different place. It was like it's like the voice of my soul talking to me. And it was the first time that I heard it. And that is one I've always found a way to find again. In different times, I don't listen and I move away and I have stupid accidents or whatever. But when I'm focused and when I want to go there and when I'm motivated and driven, I go back and I find that same voice. So it wasn't what it said, it was a sentiment of what it said and the feeling that it gave me. And then that is the one that helps me to feel this feeling of protection.
Wow.
Yeah.
So talking about the skin, racism is a big part. So tell me, how did you experience that? And I mean, this is something that people of color experience all the time. So maybe if you can give some advice to people who are struggling with that as well, how can they navigate that?
Yeah, like racism is an interesting one. All of these ones are based upon lack of knowledge, right? Ignorance, basically, right? And fear. Lack of knowledge, ignorance, which is the same as ignorance, and fear. So how racism showed itself to me growing up was different things. It was how people look at you, how people treat you, names that they call you, the N-word, all of these things. And just, wanting to hurt you. So I experienced all of these things, and I think most people of this color or different colors do. So it's not that I'm unique in that way. But this one experience, it hit it. It will sum it up. So we were walking past a pub, me and a friend. I was probably 12, that kind of age, and so there's a pub in this upper middle class area where we were growing up, and so someone ran out, "Oi, N-word, go back to your own F-word country," right? Guy was drunk, tall, adult. And I look at the guy, I'm like, we were born here, this is our country. And this guy hit me. I fall down. This guy I'm with, smaller than me, but older than me, hits him. This guy falls down. And I'm thinking, okay, that was odd. And more people start running out. And I'm thinking like, okay, I think we better run. I start running, thinking that my friend Andy is there. I'm running away, and I feel someone pursuing me. And then at some point, I feel that they're not pursuing me anymore. And I'm thinking like, well, thank God that's over. And I turn around expecting Andy to be there. Andy's nowhere to be seen. So now I'm like, okay, this is not good. And I turn around and I look in the distance from where I'd run from, and I see maybe 10, 15 guys around something, kicking something.
Wow.
And I couldn't see what it was because everyone is around. And they're hurling obscenities, N-word, blah, blah, blah. And I go back. As I walk back, they're too busy there. And I realize there's Andy. So I'm there. I was a tough kid, but I was also bullied. I went through periods of being a bully and being bullied and all the rest of that. And I'm there thinking like, okay, if I walk back there, I'm dead because I'm going to be the guy on the floor. If I don't walk back there, then I'm going to forever, remember this moment of being a coward, right? And I was stuck, fight, flight, or freeze. And like eventually what happened was that these girls end up breaking it. But one last thing. So these guys then, other guys ran out and they pulled them aside. And I thought they're going to stop it. They pulled them aside to put fresh boots in. So what's going on inside my head are things like the cowboys and the Indians, right? The cowboys are the good guys, the Indians are the dirty savages. It's how we grew up thinking. Obviously, it's not the truth. In that moment, all of these sorts of childish ways of seeing the world were broken. So then I realized that something isn't right with the world, right? That people would do this and not stop, right? And no one's coming to save you, is what it kind of felt like. You know? So what ended up happening was that these guys go away, girls come, shame the guys into stopping. And they feel, Andy gets up, thank God, and we run away. We walk away, he's limping. And then he tells the story to one of the older kids in the home. I start crying because this guy starts crying, and it's not good. I'm pissed off because I know that I didn't behave how I thought I would. I thought I'd be the man. I thought I'd be the strong one, and I'll be the guy. But these are adults, and I wasn't used to fighting adults. And so what happened was like this kind of this midnight of the soul, or whatever you want to call it. 3 days I felt terrible, like the worst I've ever felt, thinking about him and just me and all. I just kept nightmares. 6 months before, we studied the 100 Years' War, and it was about, obviously, kid put his hand up, miss, 100 Years' War. It can't be the same people fighting, can it, miss? Over my head, didn't understand. On the third day, this lesson in history came back to me, and I realized, fuck, like, pardon the French, it's not the same people fighting. It's the message is passed down from generation to generation, to hate someone based on the color of their skin and all the rest of that. And then I realized that I had a choice. As much as I wanted to get revenge on that guy and beat his head to a pulp and kick him in the head and all this stuff that was going in my head, I realized exactly what the 100-Year War was. So this is like 2 points now. One, where the mods, both are violence. Both were one when the mod, which I just made that connection, the mods come over, there's violence. And I realized that we can galvanize. Number two is that experience there where I realized that, yeah, as much as I wanted revenge, then if I took the revenge, I'm doing exactly the same thing as all of those guys on the 100 Years' War. It's perpetuated because of that kind of attitude. So then I realized that I have the opportunity to be the place where it stops. So at that point, I understood racism.
Yeah.
And then shortly after that, it took a few years, but that was the start of it. Then I realized, what it was, which is very quick. Like when someone pushes the N word, right? And I call that to you, it's air that hits your eardrum. It vibrates. It goes to this apparatus, right? Then it creates this, it hits this filing cabinet in your brain. The filing cabinet has a meaning, and that meaning is then what creates the response. He's calling me this, I'm going to hit him, because it's not a very nice thing to do or to say. So once I realized and broke down and unpacked what was actually happening, then I realized there's a key is what is in the filing cabinet in your mind. So if someone calls me the N word, if I apply a different meaning, like the word king, N word, he's calling me a king. Thanks, brother.
Yeah.
It changes the frequency and interrupts the response for everyone.
Yeah.
And I did this a few times. People would call me the N-word at school later, and I'll beat them up. And then after a while, it took a few attempts. Then what I realized was that then they saw that they didn't have the response that they were looking for. And it put them in a state of like shock, panic, didn't know what to do next. And that gave me the opportunity to come forward and say, so why would you even say that word? What were you looking to do? What were you looking to gain by it? Now, in most of those situations, it wouldn't help them. But in some of those situations, I could see that they would ask themselves that question and go like, well, yeah, why do I want to? It's a bit idiotic. So in other words, I use that as a transformational experience to transmute the energy of the N word into something positive.
Yeah.
And once I was able to do that, even though racism still exists, I've never really felt the brunt of racism ever since.
Wow.
right? And that's the thing. So again, it's like you go to a tribe in the middle of the Amazon. Maybe they have never seen the word. They don't have a word for the word white. So if you don't have a word for it, then you can't experience it. So in the same way is that racism exists. Of course, I know that, right? But it doesn't apply to me because like I treat it in a whole different way. So therefore, it doesn't persist. It doesn't impact or afflict me in that particular way.
That's a good way to deal with that. Because it's all just the words. The world is, you perceive the world the way you are. Like the world is not real, it's only real in your head. So essentially, if you perceive this as a threat, it's going to be a threat. Yeah, I'm with you on that. You are related to Malcolm X, Martin Luther King Jr., and somebody else.
Yeah, Marcus Garvey. Yeah, so when I found my dad again, so he's my uncle, his brother, is a great guy called Ronald Bonnick, and he's authored many books. And Ronald is a historian. He's probably in his 80s, maybe more by now. And he documented our family tree and all the rest of that. And then when I read one of the books, then I got it. I was like, oh my God. So in our family tree, so these are Jamaican Maroons. Jamaican Maroons came from a few different places. One is the Arawak Indians, who are like the indigenous tribe to that region of where Jamaica is. And the other one was obviously the slaves through Africa, around and in. And some were runaway slaves that came through the top. But basically, the Jamaican Maroons, one of the roots is, ships. They took the wise men and the warriors, not a great combination, as they came into what is now Jamaica, or became Jamaica. They killed the crew, killed the captain, swam ashore, marooned the ship, swam ashore. So these Maroons then became this fierce warriors, because what happened was that, it's called the Maroon War, and there were 2 Maroon treaties where the British made peace with the Maroons. Why? Because it was dense jungle, muskets. You get one shot, which doesn't really work when you've got dense foliage around you. And these Jamaicans would come and kill the British in horrible, horrendous ways, in such a way as those fighting alongside their British counterparts would lose that thirst for battles. Like, look what they just did to John. He's strung up and, I don't want to fight these guys, the savages. I don't want to be like that. I want to go back to my wife and kids. So you lose this appetite for war. So the Maroons had these 2 treaties with the British. Because again, human beings, peace lasts for a certain period of time, and then it go on again. So my great keep on going. Grandma was known as the nanny of the Maroons. These 2 brothers, Kudjo and the other one, I forget his name, and that's where these Maroons came from. So Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Marcus Garvey, Colin Powell, these are all Jamaican Maroons, and so they underpinned, not Colin Powell, but the other 3, they underpinned the American Civil Rights Movement, obviously, and so more and more and more. Again, I became the speaker before I knew any of this. I was the shyest kid. Again, the lisp, the mechanical jaw issues, all of this. I was never supposed to be a speaker. Never in a million years you would have seen me growing up. But then this thing comes through, not from, right? And the older which I get, the more I feel it's coming through, right? And I didn't want it because these guys all got shot. They all got killed. I don't want to be killed, right? So I think that's part of the reason why it's this thing about not living to my potential has been there.
Wow, amazing. Tell me about working with Madonna. How did that happen?
Yeah, the funny things. Didn't even end up meeting her. How funny. So the MTV Music Awards in Milan, 1998. And what happened was that it was the Madonna MTV Music Awards. So I had a friend who was working for MTV, Julie Dunn. Hello, Julie, if you're watching this. And I was that guy who was always able to create networks. It's just a thing. The extrovert goes to play. And one of them was I got into there's 3 agencies in Milan at that time, one called Riccardo Guy. And I was in this as a model, backdoored it. That's another story for another day. And so part of that was having this incredible network of people. One of my good friends at that time, a guy I used to hang out with, was the most expensive football player in the world, a guy called Christian Vieri. And again, so I used to work in his clubs. So I just created this incredible network of people. So what MTV needed was, some high-level people to go and attend the MTV Music Awards, right? So yeah, so it was so so it was all making way for Madonna, and I was all set up to meet her because I was creating all this audience to come and meet her and see her and all the rest of that. And then I got a call from Sydney, a guy I met before, saying, "Hey Rob, we've got this thing. It's a club. It's called Home. Well, they didn't have a name at that time. Italian guy, and it's like, I want you to come back. Here's a ticket." And I was like, Madonna, Australia. And at that point, I went back to Sydney, but I did okay. I worked with Naomi Campbell and Herzegovina and these amazing supermodels, and was hanging out with all the best football players in the world, and lots of other celebrities. But the one with Madonna is one of those. I wish I would have met her. But it didn't happen. Yeah.
So I guess the boy who was very shy becomes this extroverted guy who works with superstars and celebrities. Did you find any commonalities between you and them in terms of, do they have the same issues with self-esteem as you had when you were young?
Yeah. Like, one of the things which I really appreciated, and helped me, gave me part of what gifted to me the ability to work with anyone is hanging out with celebrities, because there's two sides or more. There's very few, because in that, occupying that particular position is hard to be normal, inverted commas. But essentially, from the ones which I met, and there were quite a few high-level ones, had really serious challenges, and what it gave me, those three things. One was this understanding that no matter what it looks like here, everyone has their own specific challenge. Number two was that it's up to you to either recognize that and do your best to heal it, or not, or run away from it. And then number three was that if you decided to go on that journey, then there's a frequency that you can connect with. And that's what I was doing. So most of these guys, we had these discussions, and we got through the first two, which then led to number three. So to summarize everything, it's like it got to a point where I treat everyone the same, because I realized we all are the same. And through hanging out with all these different types of people along the way, especially celebrities, I realized that at the end of the day, for most who are able to get through those first two, it's just a matter of being able to connect with people, not having to put on a front to show to the world this duality. And, if you can be in a space where they feel like you want nothing from them, the conversations and the connections that you can have, that you can make, the frequency of them is beautiful.
Yeah.
Amazing.
I experienced the same.
Amazing. Yeah.
Beautiful. So two more questions. One is interesting for me because you're a father now and you had this childhood. What values from your childhood and from your life and from your parents, even though you haven't seen them for quite a long time, did you instill in your kids?
Yeah. Resilience came straight up, right? But are our kids resilient? Oh, the jury's out. They're 7 and 9. One is very resilient. Yeah. But have they fully imbibed that resilience streak? I don't know. If I was to be truthful, I would say at this point, probably not. I think we spoil them a little bit too much for that, right? That's one. Number two, this ability to treat everyone the same, unity and diversity, regardless of the color of your skin, I think they've got that one. So I think our kids are really good at communicating with anyone. Sometimes they get into that mode of maybe looking down upon someone, and then we quickly say, hey, no, da. Oh yeah. So they've got that one. I like to think in threes. So one, resilience. One is unity in diversity, or united in diversity. Here in Indonesia, the motto of the country, right? The third value that would be important. Yeah, going for your goals. Like going for something, standing for something. That one I think is a work in progress.
Yeah.
With the younger one, I think she's got that more. Like she knows what she wants, and she'll go for it. And she'll get it. I think the older one is more emotional in that way, and might bend towards whoever she's with if they're a stronger personality. But the younger one is more that this is what I think, this is what I want to do. I'm doing it. Yeah.
And the final question I ask everybody, according to Robert Ian Bonnick, how to live a happy and fulfilling life.
How
to live a happy and fulfilling life, according to you.
Wow, happy and fulfilled life. Well, like I said, I like to think in threes, right? So yeah,
So waiting for free.
yeah. So it needs to be three. Okay. Number one would be, which I haven't been doing for a little bit of time, consistently actually, but one would be about spending time getting to know yourself. Whether that's meditation, whether that's doing something that you enjoy, some alone time, right? So spend some time with you. Get to learn to like and love yourself. That would be one. Number two would be, like going for your dreams. Going for that thing that lights you up, and pursuing it and going for it and being moved by it and, staying up late, not sleeping much, or whatever that passion to obsession thing looks like for you. That would be another one in there. And then the third and final one, is something which I love about Indonesia, right? United in diversity, unity in diversity. So it's this, awareness of we may look different, we may have different ideologies, different ways of seeing the world, different ways of seeing each other, different ways of seeing ourselves, but we're all connected. On that level, we're the same, different choices, but we're all connected. So that united in diversity and the understanding of it at the core, I'd say would be number three.
Wow, beautiful. You made it. It's all in freeze now. The podcast with everything is very, very structured. That's what happens when you interview the podcast. Thank you for this. I really appreciate you coming and sharing your story. Any parting words before we go? Anything you want to share?
Yeah, there would be. One that comes up is just want to acknowledge you. So this comes as a shock to some people. So even though I've known you for a while, right? So the only podcast I remember was the Million, right? The Million podcast. So a few days ago when we got this together, and it was like, okay, soul to soul, right? And there was a questionnaire like, what was your favorite episode? I was like, I haven't got one. I haven't seen any of them, right? So it was funny seeing that, right? But then, sitting down here now, and one I just saw was the Dalai Lama or someone, one of the monks. I did see that, right? And now I understand why, So I want to acknowledge you because it's so important now to reconnect soul, right?
Yeah.
To reconnect to source on who you are, and then having people, whoever's sitting in this chair, to give their honest, heartfelt, authentic, view of the world through their eyes is beautiful, man. Because again, like this united in diversity, like there are things that we all share, regardless of how we look or appear to the world. And to hear those things kind of, it connects us, it unites us, right? It makes us feel seen and heard, which is probably the two key things I haven't mentioned. But to be seen and heard is so important, right? And if you can do that, you cut out so many of the challenges the world is facing, so many challenges that people perceive to be that are not there at all, and all of these things that we have when we have this thing with each other that divides us. There's a disequilibrium between us. It's this thing of I think you're this when I know that you're not. So doing this, I love it, man. And now I understand how the whole thing connects. Please keep doing it, because I believe and feel that it's really important for the reasons that I've given before, that you continue to do it, continue to have people here sharing their story with you and the audience. So thank you very much indeed, brother.
Amazing. Thank you very much.
Oh,
For everybody listening, please like and subscribe. Whatever he said, I agree.
oh man. Beautiful. Thank you.